today marks the celebration of child labor, and the focus today is on social protection. Joining me on the phone line this afternoon is James Kofi Annan, CEO of Challenging Heights. Good afternoon, James, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Now, the laws and conditions are very clear worldwide on the protection of the children and their rights and also freedom. Now, looking at today's focus, which is on social protection also, how do we ensure that children enjoy their freedom while they also develop?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers.
Good afternoon.
I believe that the theme for today is certainly appropriate. Ghana has made some strides in terms of instituting some social protection measures. We have the school feeding program that is to ensure that children get enrollment, they get adequate feeding and get enrollment. We also have the capitation grant. That is also to make sure that every child has access to basic education. So once you are in school, then the chances that you go on the street or you be working in some form of slavery will be absent. And of course, you know that the LEAP is targeting the most vulnerable in society. So the LEAP is, for instance, targeting orphans and the vulnerable, so that they will also have the facility or the incentive to be able to go to school. Recently, the government of Ghana instituted the National Plan of Action to ensure that all forms of child labor is addressed. But my disappointment is that some of these social interventions are not working. You have a school feeding program that is failing. I mean, you know, all of us know the programs that are associated with the school feeding program. And my problem with the school feeding program is not universal enough. So you have two schools cited in similar communities. One of the schools is empty because the school feeding program is not there. The other school is full because the school feeding program is there. So all the other children move there. So it's not universal enough, and it is not consistent. The other problem I have with some of these social interventions is that if you look at the capitation grant, for instance, it's not working. You are having a capitation grant where still schools are asking children to pay ICT fees. They are still asking children to pay PTA dues. They are still asking children to bring furniture to school, etc. So there is inconsistency even in some of these programs, and there's inadequate funding. In fact, with the capitation grant, sometimes the grant is released halfway or more than halfway into the school term. So the program is not working.
Now, James, you have made that point very clear, but through these numerous social protection programs that you have lined up, do we still see freedom and development for these children?
Do
we still see freedom and development for children in the country, looking at the number of social protection programs you have mentioned early on?
In theory, yes, you see freedom and development for our children, but in practice, no. We currently have over 20,000 children enslaved on Lake Volta alone. That is according to the survey done by ILO. You still have so many children who are, in domestic servitude in Accra and Kumasi alone. You still have a lot of children who are bonded in the mining communities in Ghana. You still have a lot of children who are selling PKs and chewing gum and selling so many other things on the street. You still have nearly 1 million children who are not in school, contrary to Article 25 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution. So children are in theory, as far as our policies and social interventions are concerned, free. But in practice, they are not free.
Now, early on, you've also touched on that government has indeed put in certain measures. But when it comes to their freedom and development and even social protection at large, is it that we just leave it to government, or parents and society and government all have a critical role to play in this?
You see, all of us. I have a role to play, you have a role to play. Government has a role to play, parents have a role to play. As a society, we have a role to play. You know, if you look at the Constitution vests the protection of children ultimately on the doorstep of government. So government has the biggest role. That's why the Constitution is vested in the elected government. Now, once you have made education free, and when I say free, I mean absolutely free as required by the Constitution of Ghana, then that same Constitution imposes an obligation on the part of parents to have the responsibility, because it says it shall be free and compulsory. So the compulsory aspect of it is on parents. Once it's free, the parents has the compulsion. Then you have to prosecute parents who refuse to take their children to school and who send their children into child labor.
And finally, quickly before I even let you go, whose responsibility is it to protect the integrity of these children?
The integrity of the children is the responsibility of government, first and foremost. Then secondly, parents.
Okay.
So government would have to, through the social welfare, through the police, the doctor, through the government agencies, would have to ensure that every single child is in school. It is not be enforced. If a parent refuses to send a child in school, then the government agencies must prosecute that parent.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I have been speaking with James Kofi Annan. He's the CEO of Challenging Heights, and we're looking at the world marking the day against child labor. And there's some tips that we do have for you. We're looking at the World Day Against Child Labor, social protection for children, and these tips that 2014 focuses on social protection for children, like I told you earlier on. And some of these tips include action to introduce, improve and extend social protection in line with ILO recommendation on social protection flaws, national social security systems that are sensitive to children's needs to help fight child labor, social protection especially vulnerable groups of children, also tackling poverty and economic shocks in rendering households vulnerable to child labor, research on child labor and social protection, identifying policies that are designed to achieve multiple social protection goals.